Hi everybody. I could have called this video lots of different things. Biking on a budget, how good are Japanese motorcycles, but I've called it this for a particular reason. Depreciation. Let's just have a look at it. So on YouTube and in the press, there's been a lot of talk about depreciation, or certainly the feeds that I've had through my YouTube channel. And it's mainly to do with the price of bikes being extremely expensive these days. Which means your Part X, when you look at your changeover price, is quite huge. It's also brought on by a lot of Chinese bikes at a cheap price, and people are worried about what the trading is going to be. And indeed, some of the Indian bikes have suffered. The BSA Gold Star in particular has had a lot of bad press about its low trading values at change over time. But the important thing to remember is, when you buy a new, you're going to take a hit. You can't really go out there to buy a bike with a thought of what is it going to be worth. It's obviously in the back of your mind, but surely you judge your bike on what you want. You buy what you want and what you want to own. The true value really is only what somebody else is going to pay for it. So often it's the price you've paid for it that's the problem, not necessarily the trade-in price. But as I say, I'm not here to preach about whether you should buy new or old. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you my experience of depreciation over the last 30 years. And when I say the last 30 years, that's because it's from then that I started buying second-hand bikes. I had bought new in the 70s and 80s, mainly because bikes, particularly two-strokes, weren't as reliable. I didn't have the faith to buy a second-hand two-stroke bike, but with four-strokes, very reliable things. So I moved on to buying second-hand bikes, plus other family financial issues, kids growing up and stuff like that. So I'm going to take you through the figures over the last 30 years or so of my main road bikes. When I say my main road bikes, I'm not talking about my restorations, my classics, bikes that I might have bought for a winter hack, bikes that I may have bought of somebody because it was such a good price and didn't want it to go anywhere else. And experienced a bit of time with them. Bikes that I use on a weekend, evenings, summer tours, stuff like that. I'm going to go right through the figures. There's a bit of geeky figure work in there, so bear with me. Let's have a look at it. So let's have a look then. So in 97, I bought a 1990 FZ 750, 10,000 miles on the clock, bought it for 2,895. Sold it in 02, Part X value was 1750, made a loss of 1,145, and I covered 17,000 miles in it. So I Part X'd it for a 99 Firestorm, Honda Firestorm, with 14,000 miles on the clock. Price of that was 3,695, and I sold that on in 06 for £1,900. It was a Part X. A loss of 1,795, and I covered 13,500 miles in that one. Didn't do a lot of miles in that. So I Part X'd that for a 98. I went backwards, and that's because this bike was up. So I Part X'd that for a 98 Kawasaki ZX-9R with 2,000 miles on the clock. It was absolutely mint. It just looked like a new bike, seriously. Beautiful machine. Anyway, that cost me 3,095, and I sold that privately in 13 for 1,850. That was a loss of 1,245. I did 26,000 miles in the on the ZX-9R. I sold that to buy an 06 Phaser 1000 Gen 1. Must have been pre-registered, last of that model in that year. Had 13,000 miles on the clock. Bought it for 3,100 with extras, rental bars, levers, lots of extras, which I sold on and made a little bit. Bought that in 13, sold it private in 2020 for 2,300. I actually could have got more if I'd really held out, but the guy was really keen, nice lad, so I let it go. Only lost 800 and covered 30,000 miles in that on that Phaser. And then right up to date, bought the 2012 VFR 1200 with 16,500 miles on the clock.
Bought in 2020 for 4,600. I've still got it. So it still stands me 4,600. Don't know what the present value is. And I've covered 26,000 miles in that so far. So as a summary of that, between 97 and 25, about 28 years, my actual outlay has been 10,685. Less the VFR value, of course, because I've still got that. Total mileage on all the bikes, 112,500. Annual depreciation, approximately £381 a year. Just over £30 a month, which I think is some good going. I'm really pleased with that. So what have they cost me over and above normal servicing and running costs? Well, not a lot. I've been lucky. FZ 750, one little weld on the exhaust. I think it was the collector box had a hole in it. That was done by my brother-in-law. Just cost me £1. I can't think I did anything else to that FZ. The Firestorm didn't cost me anything over and above servicing. Nothing wrong with it at all. But I only did 13,000 miles in it. ZX9R, in 26,000 miles, I replaced the front brake light switch and I replaced a pilot jet because the rubber had gone on the pilot jet. About £5 for a repair kit. However, of course, I had to take the carbs off. But yeah, that's all that cost me. The Phaser Thou, I put a new choke cable on it because it seized, and a clutch thrust bearing, which was just side panel off, didn't even have to drain the oil. About an hour and a half's job. I think it was about 20 quid for the bearing. That's all I think I paid out on the Phaser. And the VFR thus far, the rear shock that I replaced, and the front wheel bearings. It was a OE shock, but it was second hand, so I think it was about 160 quid. Bearings about £30. But again, I had a friend who's in the business, so it didn't actually cost me that. So thus far, the VFR's not cost me a lot either. So overall, I've been really, really fortunate.
So as you can see, for my main bikes, motorcycle hasn't cost me a great deal. And I think this is the key. Bikes are really expensive at the moment. But if you really want to get into biking, you can do it at a reasonable price. And Honda, let's be fair to Honda, they've just brought out that new CB1000 at less than £9,000. Pay another £1,000 and you'll get the SP version, which is, I think, really good value. And when you think about it, I mean, in those details there was that ZX9R of mine. It was a 98 model, and new in 98, they were about 9,100. I know it was a time when bikes were very dear, but makes you think, that here we are nearly 30 years on, and Honda bringing out 150 brake horsepower 4-cylinder bike with all the trimmings for less than 10. So it's not all gloomy. So as I say, you can avoid the depreciation trap, but if you want to buy new, great, but don't expect it to be an investment. You've got to lose money, you've just got to bite the bullet, or you buy second hand and things don't depreciate as much. So just a bit of thought on that, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye.